As Israel's new military chief vows to intensify the Gaza offensive, airstrikes persist and tensions soar in the West Bank with the targeting of mosques during Ramadan. Meanwhile, the humanitarian crisis deepens as Hamas signals a willingness to relinquish control of Gaza. In Ukraine, the US shifts the stance, with President Trump suggesting peace talks with Russia could be easier. Amid missile bombardment, the future of the conflict remains uncertain. I'm Mona Musalhi. Welcome to In Focus. As Israel's new military chief vows to intensify the Gaza offensive, airstrikes continue in the north, while tensions rise in the West Bank, where Israeli forces target mosques during Ramadan prayers. Meanwhile, Hamas signals readiness to relinquish Gaza's control amidst ongoing humanitarian crisis. According to the Dawn, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights has accused Israel of war crimes in Gaza, citing the killing of Palestinians, including women and children, and the blockade on essential aid. The OHCHR stressed that denying civilians access to necessities may amount to collective punishment. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation, the OIC, condemned Israel's actions, war crimes, and genocide. OIC reconstruction plan for Gaza and urged the creation of an international fund for Gaza's people. Meanwhile, Israeli airstrikes continued in Rafah, with Palestinians killed in a drone attack as Egypt seeks broader international support for its Gaza reconstruction initiative, aiming for endorsement by the EU and other global powers. Now, providing more analysis about the most recent updates concerning the situation in Gaza, we're joined from Cairo by Mr. Ibrahim Al-Darawi, writer and political analyst. Good morning to you, sir, and welcome to Qnews and to our program In Focus. Let me here start with the new Israeli chief of staff's aggressive stance. And how do you foresee the continuation of the Gaza conflict unfolding in the upcoming months?
I think, let's say, the direct agreements and talks between Hamas and the U.S. administration, I think that there is a tangible progress in the U.S. administration. And let me also add that the U.S. administration to send its envoy to the Middle East regarding the Egyptian plan that has something positive features. According to the U.S. information and not Arab resources. So this matters goes in the directions and in the way of the achievement and the implementation of the deal. And the U.S. administration might pressure Netanyahu and his government in the upcoming period. The issue he and hence would be focusing on the reconstruction and the donors. And I think there is some sort of a change in the U.S. administration regarding Trump's proposals and his initiative, which includes the displacement of the Palestinian people and make Gaza as a Riviera, or buying Gaza and sell it once again. I think up till this moment, there is a change that envoy in the Middle East. And therefore, if we look at the matters in the Gaza Strip, and I think Benjamin Netanyahu, up till this moment, does not wish to execute the deal, and also is not intended to go back to the war once again. As we know that his political fate is relying in the resumption of the war. If the deal was executed and a full withdrawal of from Gaza, it will be the last day of Netanyahu's in the cabinet. The second point is how would he, Benjamin Netanyahu, to convince the US and to continue the maneuvering in controlling the West Bank. So the issue isn't related to the Gaza or the clashes with the Hamas, but we wish to go to some point for the West Bank to continue the war and the negotiations in the Gaza Strip in parallel, meaning that the matter is related to what Benjamin Netanyahu is doing and his extremist government through 2 points: displacement of the Palestinian, the reshaping of holding or giving some lands to the Jewish settlers in the West Bank to establish the Judah and Samira, which is a state announced by Benjamin Netanyahu lately, by protecting the establishment of the Palestinian state under the sovereignty of extremist and Jewish control.
But Dawawi, given the ICC's recent war crimes accusations, what do you think could be the impact of this on Israel's international standing, and what could be the Israeli retaliation?
I think that the international trials with against Israel, they are unfortunately in just in its place, and if we see that they are effective trials or resolutions, and the United States will use the veto. So therefore, all the international establishment issued by the United Nations, sponsored by the United States, but unfortunately the US administration never condemned Israel. This is one matter. And the second matter is the international human rights are far away of the Arab rights. It is related or to Israel, meaning in the human rights in Gaza, the rights of women and children. We have around 20,000 children were killed, and elderly people with women. These statistics of the administration to issue a statement condemning Israel. Even these international conventions and institutions were established under the supervision of Israel. So if we are talking about, if anything, it is from the Israeli side, it is far away from the human rights, even though the unfortunately, what's happening to the hunger space of the Gaza Strip, we never heard any condemnation from the US administration, along with the genocide, and not even from the international law, because it is crippled as controlled by the US administration, using the right of veto. Therefore, I think that such condemnation, if they were issued to Israel will care about it. We've seen once more when Livni was in prison, and there were some sort of demands to hold her accountable and to get arrested from the ICC, and she ran away from the back door there in the hotel she was staying in. And following that, she went back in Britain with a different name and different passport. And this is what's happening also upon the condemnations directed to them.
Right,
If
Mr.
this
Darawi, Mr. Darawi, let me here take how you took Hamas, as reported, readiness to relinquish control of Gaza, and what could this mean for any future negotiations?
I think the process about the negotiation that took place between Hamas delegations that are here in Cairo, and it's not only this time, but through several times that Cairo made a large scale negotiation with Hamas following the first day in war, and she offered flexibility, but in the first point that she's not going to contribute and to succeed the process of the negotiations through the Societal Support Committee formed by Egypt. And these matters, I think that Hamas have agreed upon, but there is a sticky point regarding what Hamas agreed upon and what is being demanded by the mediators, included the US administration. But Netanyahu is always creating pretexts as wishing the displacement of the leaders of Hamas, and this point is a very sticky point, and I think that Hamas movement, along with the mediators, see that the establishment of the Palestinian state is meaning the cancellation of the dematerialization of the Hamas and the Palestinian armed groups. If we wish to have a Palestinian state on the Palestinian land that is not linked to the Israel, and that would be achieved only by the two-state solution.
Very much clear. That was Mr. Ibrahim Ad-Darawi, writer and political analyst. We thank you so much for your special insights, and definitely remains to be seen at this upcoming stage. How will the developments unfold as Russia intensifies its missile and drone bombardments on Ukraine? President Trump spurs controversy by suggesting peace talks with Russia would be easier. Meanwhile, Ukraine's defense continues with military intelligence support from France. The Kiev Independent has reported that U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio described Russia's war against Ukraine as a proxy war between Washington and Moscow, aligning with Kremlin narratives that the West is fighting Russia through Ukraine. Despite Western military support, no troops have been sent to Ukraine to avoid escalation. Rubio emphasized that U.S. President Donald Trump views the war as a prolonged conflict, urging for a resolution to avoid further escalation between nuclear powers. He criticized the strategy of continuous weapons supply, calling it insufficient for achieving peace. Rubio also pointed to tensions between U.S. President Zelensky and Trump, stressing that both Russia and Ukraine need to make concessions and engage in direct negotiations to end the war. providing more analysis about the most recent updates. Joining us from Kiev, Mr. Ivan US, advisor of Ukraine's National Center. Good morning to you, sir, and welcome to Let me start with the recent US shifts, and how do you assess Washington's role in the Russian-Ukraine conflict?
Good morning, Dr. Mona, and greetings, of course, to all audience. You know, now in Ukraine, not only me, but many people start to think whether the United States of America is an ally of Ukraine or don't. Because a lot of statements from Donald Trump during last several weeks, including statement that President Zelensky is a dictator, that his rank is 4%, and of course, it was statement, but after the statement, we received the decision not to provide military aid to Ukraine, especially not to give Ukraine anti-rockets, so rockets that helped to us to destroy the Russian rockets that attacked Ukrainian cities and energy generating facilities. In that case, now before the meeting in Jeddah, inside Ukraine, there are a lot of talks. So whether it will be meeting with a country that want to end this war, but what actually the end of war means Donald Trump, probably in capitulation. And the question and the fear that under world peace, he means capitulation, of course, it seriously create a problem to Ukrainian society of interpretation of Donald Trump's state. That's why now, especially after yesterday's statement, when he said that for him it's easier to talk with Russia compared to Ukraine, so it's easier to talk with aggressor, with a victim. It's a question. State is pushing world to the third world war, so Ukraine have immediate response. Whether Donald Trump read the post from the Chinese embassy in Washington, that China is ready for all types of war if the United States wants this war. I think that rather his trade war is more likely to lead to third world war than actually Ukrainian actions. So that's...
Let me hear Mr. US ask you about the implications of Rubio's proxy war comment or statement. And how will that reflect on the future U.S.-Ukraine relations?
You know, Dr. Mona, for us, statement that it's proxy war, so it's a of state Russia versus state Ukraine. Now Russia invited Northern Korea troops. Of course, Russia says that they not invited them, but our soldiers captured Northern Korean soldiers. And it's not accident people, it's Northern Korea army, so it means that they actually participate in this war. It means that it's first of all Russia interest. As for current administration in the United States, we have such a feeling that their main purpose to accuse their predecessors, I mean Joe Biden and his team, that start this war. But as I said, start this war against. As for administration, there's a help to Ukraine to defend the same values that Ukraine have with the United States, but it was not a war between Russia and US. It's actually rhetoric of Russia. And that's another moment why Ukraine have a fear about relationship between Ukraine and the United States in the nearest future, because the United States current administration constantly repeat Russian accusation against Ukraine. So in such a situation,
the terminology, or this term, proxy war. What do you have on that?
As I understand, Mr. Rubio to say that Russia want to attack US, but they could not do directly. That's why they decided to attack US and Ukraine. Attacking Ukraine, it's a war versus the United States. Partially, I agree, because really, if you switch on Russian television, you will see that they constantly said that we have a war with the United States, and in Ukraine, it's manifestation of this war. But dying Ukrainian people, they destroying Ukrainian residential buildings, our energy generating facility, our plants, and saying that it's a war versus America. And now we hear from Mr. Rubio that proxy war of Russia versus the United States. But as I understand now, if Mr. Rubio correct. If it's proxy war versus US and the US administration change, probably Russia should stop this war because they have absolutely other approach from the United States. But stopping this war, it means that there is not what Mr. Rubio talking about. That's why I think that we try to explain that the United States administration question whether the current administration understand that. Some politicians from Republican Party too, actually, from Donald Trump party, explaining them that, guys, you know what is going on. You understand that it's not a correct information, and that's why due to constant statement of Donald Trump, especially about money that they give to Ukraine. Yes.
It's not that I understand. These were the statements by the U.S. Foreign Secretary, and of course, this is how you describe the situation here. Let me go to another issue, which is in light of the ongoing bombardments. We've seen this exchange of bombardment between Russia and Ukraine. So there is any realistic path to a ceasefire in sight?
Mona, the problem that it's hard to talk about ceasefire with the countries that want to destroy you. And when some politicians in theory said that, oh, it should be ceasefire, unfortunately, it's only in the books. It's not in the reality. In reality, there is a war when one side wants to destroy the other. Ukraine wants to defend ourselves from Russia. Sometimes we do strikes in response, but let's be frank, we have no such a big military like the Russia. We couldn't like Russia in previous, only Ukrainian actually cities. And then actually said that, oh, it's our response. We don't have such weapons, and we saw it attack Russia too. That's why I think that, as sometimes the American administration said that Ukraine have no cards. Actually, we have not such strong, but cards too. And any gambling game always led to changing of the situation. It's happened in the world history for many times. I understand that the United States of America is a very young country. They appeared in the end of the 18th century. I don't want to compare that with other countries, especially with your country, with Egypt, when Egypt appeared on the world map and world institutions start to form in your country. But in world history, a lot of times happen situations.
No, let me get this clear. When Egypt, excuse me, what?
Yeah, I want to say that we know the history of Egypt. We know the history of many European countries. It started many centuries ago, and they saw Egypt many thousand years ago. But for US, they appeared at the end of 18th century. That's why we have a feeling that the United States of America want to build absolutely new world and forgot about history, forgot about many moments. And
it's
yes.
Definitely, we're speaking about very different cases here. We're speaking about ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine, mediator in many of the international and the Middle East conflicts and crises. However, I guess our time is out here, and I have to end it. That was Mr. Ivan, U.S. advisor at Ukraine National Center. We thank you so much for your special insights. As global tensions rise in Gaza and Ukraine, the path to peace remains uncertain. Will international efforts bring resolution, or will these conflicts escalate further? We'll see. This brings us to the end of today's episode of In Focus. Many thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews.